Right. And we are live, and good morning to everybody watching us on LinkedIn, YouTube, also Facebook, or listening to us in Clubhouse. It's very nice to have you with us. I'm happy to say welcome to you, of course, and to everybody who is in the studio. And when I say everybody who is in the studio, I want to say that it is three people here. Today we
Good
have our
morning.
good morning. Yes, we have Katheryn Gronauer with us for the very first time, as I wrote yesterday in my post on LinkedIn. Katheryn, thank you very much for being with us, agreeing to be our guest speaker, and for. I'm sorry, this may sound really kind of strange, but for looking so beautiful, as always. Yeah.
For that.
And Tim, apologies for never complimenting you on your looks.
I understand. I accept it. I lean into it.
Okay.
I'm a crusty old man. That's okay.
Well, many of you have already met Katheryn, I believe, either in person or online on LinkedIn and maybe some other online platforms. And I'm going to make a very brief introduction of her. And Katheryn, I'm going to give you the screen once I'm done with this. Well, Katheryn is a coach, an executive coach, and she's based in Tokyo. She has been working in this field for quite a while, and she has helped a lot of executives who come to Japan to transition, uh, to make the cultural transition here and start enjoying their life and be successful here, of course. But this is all from me. So, Katheryn, welcome to our podcast today. And well, let's start. I'm giving you the screen, the whole screen, not
Okay,
only one third of it or half of it.
yeah, well, thank both of you so much for having me, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. As Maya shared, my name is Katheryn. I've been a coach since 2016, so I'm now in my ninth year of coaching. I started off with the intention of helping people with workplace stress, so work-life balance, and found out that the main sources of stress were cultural reasons. So things like people wanting to get healthy, but not even knowing how to shop in Japan and how to identify things in grocery stores to, being in a leadership position and feeling like you don't really understand your team or don't really understand how decisions are made, things like that. So my practice kind of evolved to helping people with cross cultural education and leadership, and I've really enjoyed working with people in global corporations, not just in Japan, but also other parts of APAC, as well as the West Coast of the United States. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking a little bit more about my personal background. So the theme today is about the Sento. So maybe Maya, I'll hand it back to you and we can get into that.
Yes. So this is the very first time again for us to talk about Sento, and we know that Sento has been part of let's say, the Japanese tradition here for a very long time. And I was so happy. I'm sure that Tim was very happy when we heard you come up with the theme, Katheryn, about Sento.
Yes.
And yes, because many people don't realize that centers are not just places where you get clean, right? You clean your body, you clean everything. But I think that it's also a place where you clean your soul to a certain extent by connecting with others, letting things go, relaxing, and creating ties and everything. So, Katheryn, I don't want to steal from you the pleasure of talking about Sento and how actually things started, because for you, I remember that you telling us that it was your family's business, right?
Yes.
Yes. And so I would say that we're about to hear an insider's view, about this culture here. And I know that quite a lot of foreigners, including me, who have been here for a while, actually love this tradition because it is indeed a wonderful way to get connected with the local community, with your neighbors and everybody. But Katheryn, once again, back to you.
Yeah, thanks so much. So, sometimes when you know something very well or something's part of your normal day-to-day routine, you don't really notice that it's unusual to other people. And I think that for me, the Sento is that thing. So I grew up in a family with generations of bathhouse owners. And I'm half Japanese and half American. And every summer I would come and visit Japan and visit my Japanese side of the family and basically go to Sentos every day. And I thought that that was just the normal thing to do. And I think for a lot of people in the older generations, that was kind of, the normal part of their day to day routine. But for younger generations, the idea of going to the Sento kind of on a day to day basis is something that's not really part of the current lifestyle. And so I just have all these memories of just growing up and going there. And for me, it was one of the places where I felt the most comfortable and the most relaxed, even though it was the place where you're the most exposed. And I always thought that that was kind of interesting and unusual. And I think a big part of that is, growing up biracial in Japan and being out in society, there's all these, feelings of wanting to fit in, but being in the Sento where everybody's exposed and you kind of see a lot of things about people that you wouldn't normally see out in society. I think that's the area where I felt like I could actually relax. So that's just a little bit of the background.
Right. It's interesting. I remember because before I came to Japan, I did some guiding, and well, I guided actually British tours, I mean, people who were visiting my home country. And we have a lot of onsens there and a lot of public baths as well. And that's a little, little known fact about Bulgaria. But what I wanted to say is just to the point you made that when you're the most exposed, you actually feel the most relaxed. And that's how we feel back home too. But we, after a long hike up in the mountains and so on, my groups were, we would invite them, to an onsen back home. And then they would be quite apprehensive in the beginning because like, oh, do you mean that we have to go there without a swimsuit or, without anything, just like this? And yes, don't worry, it's, men and women are separated. There is no problem, to be afraid of anything. And still they would be apprehensive. And then once they got into to the public bath and they felt, I don't know, maybe that was the hot water and the atmosphere, the steam there. Suddenly, so all the barriers fell or they would fall. And right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a psychological thing to it because there's no way to be more vulnerable than to be naked. Like that's the ultimate invulnerability. And connecting with people requires vulnerability both psychologically, but there you're put into the situation. And it's funny because my kids are half, of course, and they would never go into a bath in America naked. But when they came to Japan, they did, and I said, "Why are you cool with it?" And they're like, "Because it's Japan. Nobody cares. Like nobody
Okay.
cares. I'm not self-conscious in Japan, but I am in my own culture where I grew up," which I thought was an interesting, because there's no more rank when your clothes are off. There's nothing to tell people what your
Mm,
status symbols are, and that whole psychological dimension of soaking together is really there's something beautiful about it once you get used to it. But anyway, I just wanted to throw in that comment.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what prompted this topic actually for us to talk about is that, when people ask me, hey, Katherine, what is it like to start a business or what it's like to do public speaking or what is it like to, I don't know, start a website or whatever it is, my first thought is always that it's a lot like going to a Sento. So, even little things like just posting on LinkedIn, that moment you hit that click to post, it's kind of like that moment where you're taking your pants off or something at the center.
Right.
But like after you do that, then all of a sudden there's kind of this feeling of comfort, or you kind of find your groove after that once you kind of embrace certain challenges. So, and Tim, I think you've also highlighted some other things about how going into the Sento, that idea of rank not really being there. So it's like you literally have nothing to hide, and it's a place where people can kind of be on a little bit more on a level playing field.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
and look, I shared this story offline with you guys, but the funniest, I had so many funny experiences in the Sento. Like, I have a whole list of them, but the funniest one was I was the only Gaikokujin in the that went there. I was a regular, right? And one day I'm washing off. I'm sitting down on my stool with my senmenki, and I'm washing off. And this little kid comes over and he looks over at my shoulder and he looks at my equipment, my junk, and he goes, "Onajida, it's the same." He was so surprised that the guy Kokujin had the same basic equipment, as him. And it was just so funny. It was just a funny, beautiful moment where in a sense he saw our shared humanity, right, in a really cute way. So um, yeah, I love it, and I felt so close to the community because I got to know them all because I went every day, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yes. Well, oh, sorry, I'm still laughing about that, but yes, because I have similar. I mean, not exactly the same experiences, obviously, but when I was in Hokkaido, and it was already 17 years ago, so and quite often I would be the only person. I mean, the only foreign person in Diofuro or Sento, the onsen, and so on. And I would sometimes, especially in the changing room, there would be, small girls, small boys, and they would look at me, and then their mothers would be like, "Oh, kininaru," and I'm
Yeah.
like, why would they, why would they be so, like, bothered, or maybe not bothered, but curious, and so on. And maybe it's because, of the color of my hair, the color of my eyes, and so on and so on. But it was, back then it was interesting, and at the same time, that was that curiosity, as Tim says. It was very, very interesting, very sweet. And once again, that's probably the best place to show everybody that we are all in the same human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I also feel like it really taught me a lot about things that I probably wouldn't otherwise know about. So think like there were some women in the bath who, one woman only had one breast,
Mm,
or there was multiple women who had C-section scars, and these are things you don't really like, obviously notice when you're out and about during your day. And I recently gave birth, and I also had a C-section, and
mm,
it's something that I feel self-conscious about, like when I have my pants not quite fitting the way the way they should be. And but I know that I can go to the Sento and I'm fine if I'm naked there because there's other people there too who also have that.
mhm.
So I feel like those things that you observe about other people, it kind of creates a feeling of normalcy for you. So
yes,
I don't feel
yes,
conscious about something that otherwise I might have.
Mm.
Yeah.
yeah. I one of the things I love going, and obviously there's the wall between the men and the women, but it's not that high. You know what I mean? Because it was built for people at the time were much shorter in stature, right? But you can hear what's going on the other side.
Yeah.
And there was a lady, if I went at the same time every day, she would sing
Yeah.
like
Oh,
on the woman's side, and it would beautifully echo through the
nice.
Sento. And it was
Mm.
such a nice vibe. And of course, you got the big painting of Mount Fuji behind you. And then you got the old men who would get in the scalding hot water, like, and the younger people, it's harder to dip your toe in, but I was always like, oh, if they can do it, I better do it, and you'd get in like, and then once you get in, you're okay. But it was, man, just getting in, and you were afraid to turn on the cold water because you didn't want to tick off the old men who wanted that extreme heat,
Yeah.
but just such great memories. I still miss going there, and the Sento you don't see as many these days, right? Is it a kind of a
It is
and,
a
and,
fading business. Yeah. I think at one point my family had 5 bathhouses, which was like an unheard
Mhm.
of number. Like having more than one was considered pretty rare. So having 5 was just, astronomical.
Right.
Back during like the wartime, especially when people didn't, a big part of Japan was demolished. The bathhouse was still freestanding, that wasn't affected. So there was just so many people who had to go there and take a bath, and so there was definitely a high demand for it back then. But since around that time, it's been continually kind of on the decline. But I don't think that public bathing itself is on the decline. I just think that people engage with it in a different way.
Yeah.
You still have things like Super Sento, which are pretty popular. So just, a location where you can go to take a bath that also has other features like a spa or a
Right.
place where you go have dinner, that type of thing. So
Mhm.
it's more interactive than just taking a bath. But in my family, our last bathhouse, we closed it about 10 years ago, right around the time when my grandfather passed. So the last one kind of unfortunately died off with him. But yeah, I think that's just kind of the direction where the bathhouse is going right now.
How much
Yeah.
is the Sento now? Because I think it was like 150 yen when I used to go, or 200 yen.
Oh,
The
Yeah.
places I've gone to recently are kind of around 500 yen. I would say 500, 550. That seems to be kind of the
mhm.
norm. But yeah, it used to
Yeah.
be, way less than that. Definitely affordable to go every single day. Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes,
Well,
it's so.
inflation.
Yes, in Tokyo, in my the area where I live, I hear stories that there were sentos, in every what's that, cho, right, but not at the moment. So they have actually come down to one onsen, which is used by most everybody, on weekends, and of course many people who are free on weekdays as well. But yeah, I also remember next to my parents-in-law's house, they had a Sento, but yes, but it was well, demolished maybe about 20 years ago or so, very soon after I came to Japan. So, and they were like, "Oh, this was such a good time, we could go there and relax, and we didn't have to worry about, you know, um, because for them it was, that you have to maintain your bathroom quite well here, right? Like the cleaning is mandatory, maybe every week you have to do that because otherwise, I mean, the humidity just helps all those, what's that, the molds come out and so on. And
Yeah.
so, and because my father-in-law actually was in charge of cleaning the bathroom at home, and he was like, when there was Sento next door, I didn't have to clean. And I had more time to do this and that, and so yeah,
Yeah.
that's obviously another benefit for for the
Yeah.
people.
I
Yeah.
guess on the flip side, though, there's a new Sento that just opened up in Harajuku. So a
Oh.
new building just went up on the corner of Omotesando Dori and Meiji Dori, and they put a Sento in there. And it's such like a high traffic area, and I was like, why did they build a Sento here? So I went and I asked them, and they said, well, we really are passionate about the Sento lifestyle and culture. We want to preserve it, so we figured why not open something in an area that's kind of more geared towards where tourists come, where a lot of there's like a high traffic area where we can bring more attention to it, and then
Mm,
hopefully through the success of that we can open up more. But they really try to like modernize it. It definitely looks like the design and everything is geared more towards younger generations. A lot of the typical centos probably haven't been renovated for decades. So I
Yeah.
think that's part of the reason why people prefer like super centos or onsen in general.
Yeah.
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 And I don't know it, as you said, your first question was why here, this, very, very intense traffic area. And even though it is counterintuitive, I can see the reason for them going there. I mean, you explained it just now. And that's really commendable, I believe, because this is, once again, a tradition that everybody loves once they try it, and get used to it. And so not losing it is a very important thing, I believe. It's really one of the things that I can see. And sometimes people, they talk about tourism and how now, there are so many tourists, and how the Japanese people here, the locals, basically are kind of apprehensive. And I can see why they are, because with modernization and everything, and the influx of different cultures and everything, gradually, there is that growing threat of losing the customs, or just having them a kind of weekend, and that shouldn't happen actually, because it's wonderful to have a lot of new people, a lot of tourists, a lot of I would say different cultural residents that come from different cultural backgrounds, but still, preserving the traditions is a very good thing. And I didn't know about that Sento in Harajuku, but I'm going to check it out now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So,
Sento just opened like only, I think they just started doing a play open about a month ago, and I think it just only like last week started opening to anybody.
mhm,
But I just really admire their attitude about it. Instead of thinking like, oh, this is a fading business, why would we even do it? They're like, no, we're gonna, modernize it, put it in a great location, and then see how to kind of rebuild this, attention to this thing that's
mhm.
really to our culture. So I'm excited to see how that continues and how that evolves.
Yeah, I think in a very general sense, when you talk about tourism, especially when, foreigners, gaikokujin, are coming to Japan, um, as Maya said, like you see on the news every night, I look at Kamakura, all these, people coming, then they interview the shop owners, and the shop owners, like, we welcome the business, but they're not really following our etiquette. They're littering the place. And I feel like we need more to bake into the process, the teaching people about the culture, and
Mm,
this applies to the Sento as well, right?
yes.
So, on a quick side note, one trend in Atami, which we all know is hot springs, but it's like a Sento with natural hot spring water coming in, right? They've
Mhm.
shifted, so you don't have to stay at a hotel to go and enjoy the hot springs. You can just go during the day and pay a fee and go in and enjoy the hot springs, and then you can spend the day shopping and go back to Tokyo the same day, right? So even the younger people are starting to do that more. But
Mhm.
as I was telling Katherine offline, I got introduced to the Sento because I lived with my Japanese roommate in what they call the gaijin house, and they're all around the bases, right? And they built them after the war because they didn't have housing. And they built these houses and they didn't have tatami mats. They built them for the foreigners, and they were a little bigger than average. But ours was we call it a boroya. It was a dilapidated house because it was so old, to the
Mm,
point where when a truck would come down the street, I lived on the Rokujo Dori, it felt like an earthquake and the whole house would shake, right? And
yeah.
so it was so old, and our landlord wanted to demolish it and build an apartment building. But, the Japanese laws, they can't kick you out, right? So one day, our boiler broke. My roommate Ken-chan, he calls the Oya-san. He goes, our boiler broke. And the Oya says, oh, that's a shame. That's all he said, like I'm not going to fix it. So I'm like, oh my God, what do we do? We can't take a shower. I didn't even know Sentos existed. He goes into his room, comes out with his semmenki and a towel around his neck. He goes, I'm going to the Sento. You want to go with me? I go, okay. So I go with him, and he taught me from the beginning the etiquette.
Yes.
First of all, of course, anyone who lives here knows you don't jump in the bath without washing your body.
Mhm.
And but he told me the Japanese way. You you put the towel on your thigh, and you get your bar of soap, and you rub it till it's all soapy, and then you clean your whole body, and you got the shower. So I was lucky because I had a guide to
Mhm.
show me the proper etiquette on how to behave in the Sento. And I could see maybe some apprehension by foreigners who don't know the etiquette. They're going to go in there and break the rules because they don't know what the rules are, right? So
That's
I
true.
Mm,
think,
There's multiple
yeah,
levels. It's not just going there and being naked with strangers. It's like, what am I doing here? Where do I,
exactly.
oh, you sit down when you're taking a bath, okay, or like when you're showering, and just like little details in there I think are difficult. I remember one time I went and climbed Mount Fuji, and part of this kind of package was to go to a Sento afterwards. So there were just tons of people at this particular Sento that was near Mount Fuji, and basically to the point where people were lined up waiting for to use a shower or waiting to sit down to wash themselves. And there was like a group of foreigners who were there. They were all wearing bathing suits, and can tell people like you're not supposed to wear it, or there's like signs up there that say like don't wear any bathing suits. But if the person themselves is too uncomfortable to go in without putting one on, like you can only really do so much. But I think that they didn't realize that by keeping the bathing suit on, they're actually drawing more attention to themselves. So
Yes,
if
yes,
they had just taken
yes.
it off, I think people wouldn't have even been really paying attention much to what they're doing. But instead, they just really stood out. And now you're watching their every mood. Okay, like so they have a bathing suit on. What else are they going to do? Are they going to put their towel in the water? Carry
Yeah.
soap out? Like you're just kind of really monitoring what these people are doing, essentially.
Mm.
And I think teaching the etiquette can add value to the experience for the foreigner because not only what the etiquette is, but why. And I think people will appreciate having that knowledge. And I also think it would help the experience, and the Japanese would be more acceptable when they see the Japanese are very forgiving. They don't expect you to know everything, but when they see you're making the effort, they cut you a
Yeah,
lot of slack and they appreciate it, right?
yeah.
So for
I think
sure.
the thing I used to forget quite a bit when I was a kid was just bringing a small towel, the towel that you can put on your head when you go into the water. But that towel is so key for when you get out of the bath because you need to wipe off all of the water, but so you're not
Yeah.
getting into the locker area. So I have, multiple times when I was trying to get out of the bath, I'm like, oh, I can only get so much water off of my body. And I just know people are going to be upset that I'm tracking in all this
Right,
water,
right, 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 right.
you know. So you
Yeah,
really have to prepare for the end, basically, not just to go in, but knowing,
yeah,
what you need from at the very end of it as well.
yeah.
Yes, it's fascinating to me because now you said, Catherine, that you have to prepare for the end. And then it hit me just when you think about how in Japan people do business, they always have the end result in mind. Right.
Yes.
And it's fascinating because it transpires even such through such let's say very easy practice or something so ordinary, right? Like Sento. So you have to think about the time when you finish your bath and you go out. So that's when you finish mostly the experience. So, and it's again business in business here. We sometimes say, oh, everything happens so slowly here and so on and so on. But I think that everything happens so slowly because people think about the end result and what they want to get as an end result, and they plan for it and plan for it and plan for it, and then eventually, they start working for on it and so on. So once again, we are back to culture, I believe. But
Great topic. I think an analogy for that with the bath would be if you could just spend a little bit more time at the beginning, like layering your clothes and your items in your locker, like to make sure your bath towel is on the top, for example. So
Right,
when you
right, 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 right,
the
right.
first thing you need is your towel, right? And
yeah,
usually if you put all your towels and stuff in first and then you take your clothes off, your dirty clothes wind up on top and then you have to rip the towel out from the bottom.
yeah,
Well, I've thought about this a lot, but
It's like first in, first out, or last in, out. Yeah, yeah. You have to be
exactly. So
very
it's like, yeah, you have to think about that.
methodical. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think, in other
I'm
cultures, it's
I'm sorry, just chime in here.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Oh, Yuka.
Yuka,
Yes.
Hey,
good
Catherine,
morning.
are you guys in LinkedIn and YouTube?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Somehow couldn't find you guys. Okay, so
Oh,
but you're here in the clubhouse. That's all that
yes.
matters. Hi, Catherine.
like, how
So
are you?
it's so fascinating. I can tell, Tim. This indeed. Sento topic is near and dear to your heart. I could tell you really enjoy. So Catherine, I grew up in Japan, but I'm in Dallas at this moment. When I was growing up, my father started out his own business, and then we were, dirt poor, so we didn't have a bath, our own, private bathroom in the house. So we have to go to the Sento, and then kids sort of, my classmates, oh, poor Yuka, don't have, the, they the house doesn't have a bathroom that I could hear they're whispering behind my back. But I was
Yeah.
just telling myself back then, and whenever we went to the Sento, my parents bought us, me and my brother, the coffee gyunyu, those like milk with the coffee
Ah,
flavor.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I
Yes.
love that coffee
yeah.
milk.
Mhm.
Do they still do that?
Yes. Yes. We
Well,
do.
I think
In my, in
yes.
my
Yeah.
they
Oh
have.
yeah. You can buy it. There's a little. They sell everything. I think ours sold beer too. I mean, there was a lot of drinks you could buy, right?
Really?
There's
Mm,
basket.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Mhm.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
See,
think
that's
that
like that.
go ahead,
Anyway,
Yoko.
that's my childhood memory. And then yeah, we had a good time. We took a walk to the Sento, and then we chatted, and that was really good memory of mine. But
I was
these
like,
days, do really Japanese go to Sento seriously? I'm sorry, like you mentioned the Super Sento. That's more like a
Mm.
massage entertainment, right?
Ah,
So do they
It's like a
really go to
spa.
Sento? I'm sorry. I don't know. Maybe this question should have been phrased better. But
well,
how is it amongst native Japanese?
I think that the people you commonly see in the Sento nowadays are definitely of an older generation. Those are the people who are going there just like on a regular basis. But if you do hear someone say, hey, let's go to a Sento, and it's a random Wednesday evening, that person might decide to go to a Super Sento instead of just their local Sento. So I do think that from a trend perspective, people are going to areas that maybe have a little bit more features beyond just the bath. So even just things like the Sento that I grew up going to, we didn't really have much of like a waiting area where people could sit and have a beer afterwards. We had a lot of laundry machines where people could do their laundry, but we didn't really have that kind of post bath area where people could kind of relax like most centers do. So I think that nowadays people do go to the Sento, maybe not every single day, but if they do, they're looking for facilities that have a little bit more to offer.
Yeah.
yeah.
And for the young people, like sometimes I see this, like there's a baseball team, and they practice all day long, and then for the team building, and it seems like a coach is say, hey guys, let's go and get go to the center, and maybe I buy you guys pizza, and the kids go yeah, so seems like
Yeah.
that's great for the team building as well.
Yeah, I was even just like kind of reading up on some of the history of the Sento because it's amazing how much there is about it that I just didn't know until I was like, reading some history books. But, even like in the Japanese military, for example, like, you would just go to the Sento together afterwards. And that was the place where you didn't have to show as much rank. So during the day, you're like all, behaving according to your position,
Senpai Kohai. Yeah. Yeah.
relationship. Then when you're at the Sento, of course, people are mindful of their relationships, but it's just a different space where they can connect on a different level. And yeah, you still see those types of interactions today. I also think that men probably have a very different experience with the concept of public bathing than women do. I hear even from my own father, who is American. If you're part of a sports team, you might have like people might have a communal showering area. So I feel like the concept to men for kind of showering together or being part of a fraternity, that type of thing, might be a little bit more common than it maybe is for women. That's just kind of my assumption here. But yeah, I think that concept of bonding, you even just mentioned it for yourself with your family about taking that family time to go to the Sento together. That community kind of focus to kind of unwind together is very strong.
Speaking of history, I got a question.
Yeah.
Or- I somehow I feel like I read somewhere that
Hmm.
originally the center were men and women together. Is that true?
You know what? I actually am not 100% sure. I think it really
Okay.
depends on the location too, though. There are some areas that do permit like men and women to be mixed, and then there's some other areas where it could be separate. But just kind of thinking about the history in general, like public bathing goes back really, really.
Right.
But,
Mm.
like, if anything, like bathing by yourself, like privately, is really uncommon in the
Right.
scope of history.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes. Yes.
yeah, it's like just the past few decades, people have been, showering in their homes. That's actually really
A
like,
new
yeah, it's kind of a new thing.
new
Uh,
thing. Right. Right. Right.
we're talking like Roman times, like
Right.
25 AD.
Mm-hmm.
That was back during the time where architects were just figuring out how to concentrate water into
Right.
one infrastructure where people could come and take a bath together. And I do think that those were separate, men and women. I might have to like double check about that, but those were also just very large places where people could go not only to purify themselves and relax, but also the community focus as well. It was just another hangout spot, like going to a bar. It was just the place to go and kind of unwind and chat with other
Yeah.
people.
And
Yeah.
then the other thing, and this is just okay. Go ahead, Maya. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, I wanted to say that the Roman baths, yes, they were, as long as we know, most of them were separated for men and women. But yeah, they were basically places where people could, as you said, Catherine, not just relax and purify their souls and thoughts and everything, but to create, to bond together, especially the soldiers, the warriors and everything and so on. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Tim, go on. Sorry. Oh,
Yeah.
Catherine.
Yeah. Go
yeah.
ahead. It's fine.
If you look
Mm,
even at Japanese history, like why have sentos in general? Like when you have hot springs, like but
mhm.
there came a point in time where um, cities became more urban. People started living more concentrated in cities, and so that created demand to have these infrastructures that were built kind of where people didn't have to go out towards a local water source or an onsen to take their baths. So it's just interesting to see how kind of society has evolved and how the bath has been kind of this part of how that evolution has happened. And even nowadays, people have baths in their home, but you can still see that there is a demand on some level to go outside of your home and bathe publicly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, indeed. And going back also, I think that even nowadays, in certain areas, they're not so common, but of course, in certain areas, you can still, find sentos or onsens where men and women go together. And
Yeah,
I remember I actually went to one of those, and it was years, maybe a year after um, uh, that's the Tohoku earthquake, the Great East Japan earthquake, because within the company which I was working for, we were trying, to in any way to support the region. So we went there. Had a tour, like organized a tour for ambassadors and also business people in the industry, and of course we had to go there. And then at Hachinohe, yes, it was Hachinohe in Aomori. So we were staying at the ryokan, and then that ryokan actually had the just one bath for both men and women, and everybody was kind of, is it true? Do we have to go there all together? The thing though was that, and it still is, I believe that it's very dark inside, and because of the high temperature of the water, there is a lot of steam, and you cannot see even 50 centimeters away from you. You cannot see who is there, right?
right.
So well, even though of course we went there, and it was kind of uncomfortable in the beginning, as soon as we got inside and realized that you couldn't see anything there, it was like,
Right.
everything was, yeah. So but yeah, probably such places are quite rare nowadays, even though they exist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think nowadays it's just if you want to book a private bath where maybe you and
Yeah.
your partner go in together, but it's still not publicly with everybody else, those are
Hmm.
definitely acceptable. But yeah, it's pretty rare to hear those areas where it's mixed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd like to venture into a territory. I'm going to use two words that rhyme: taboos and tattoos. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And I'll start out with an anecdote. Okay. Um, so my son is a break dancer, and of course, we all know tats are now gone. They've gone mainstream for a while, right? And particularly in the hip hop world, they're very popular, right? So my son has a Japanese friend who's also a break dancer, Subasa, and he really loves tattoos, but he doesn't have any. And my son said, "Why don't you get any?" And my son doesn't have any either, but he's like, "Why don't you get any?" And he says, "Because I'll never be able to go to onsen, and I just that's the most important thing in the world that I go to onsen, right?" And what's my experience, and this is the danger of anecdotal, stories. The first Sento I went to, we had a lot of gentlemen with full body tats, okay? And it's funny because they'd come in drunk and they'd invite me to go out and drink it with them. And I'd say, "Oh, yeah, sumimasen, chotto kyou wa yoji ga atte." I'd politely get out of it. But so to me, if I had based my experience as, "Oh, this is how things are," I would be wrong, because I believe that is the exception, not the rule. And I have lots of American friends who now, like, they really want to go and enjoy onsen, but they have tats. And yes, if they're small, you can cover them up. But some of these they have big tats, that are a little bit harder to cover up, right? So do you see that changing? I think we all know why, because it equals, organized crime in the minds of traditional Japanese, right? Do you see that changing? Because lots of younger Japanese are getting tats now. Just your thoughts on that.
Whenever I've been asking, just people in general about what their thoughts are on the Sento, one thing that comes up a lot is, "Oh, I have tattoos, and so I have to find a specific place that will allow me in." And since I don't have tattoos, it's something that kind of slipped my mind about this potential, difficulty to access them. But the Sento I grew up in didn't have any restrictions for tattoos.
Oh, good. Yeah.
There weren't that many people who have them, but I know that, for example, I'll share with you a story. I think I might have mentioned it offline, that my mother said that there was many people who had these beautiful works of tattoos, and these are like art, like masterpieces, like
Right.
They aren't just like little tiny little symbols here and there. It's like really full body works of art. And she said that there was this woman who had this beautiful, beautiful Buddha on her back. And, decades later, she saw the same woman. It was now a saggy Buddha on her.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So the Buddha had transformed. It was a smiling Buddha to a frowning Buddha. But I think that a lot of Sentos initially were probably open to tattoos, but because they may at some point have noticed that they were losing business because people were nervous about being around Yakuza, they decided to kind of restrict it and say, we're not going to take anybody with any tattoos whatsoever.
Right. That was their way out. Yeah.
Yeah, that has somehow become the norm now. So now you really have to go out of your way to find places that allow tattoos. I believe the place I mentioned to you in Harajuku allows tattoos.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
We're asking them, "Are tattoos okay?" And they're like, "Mochiron desu. Mochiron desu." Of course.
Yeah, they should have, like, we're tattoo friendly. That should be part of their, their advertising, right?
Why does that make sense? Because of the location? It's more hippie?
and the young people.
Yeah, they're targeting. Well, they're trying to kind of revitalize this,
Okay.
culture. And so
I'm asking. Sorry. Because 5 years. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, you can go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. 5 years ago, I was watching the TV show. That's, it's a TV show, but 5 years ago, right? It's kind of current. And then this young father, he just got out of the organized crime, and then he has a tattoo all over, the typical Yakuza tattoo, right?
Oh, okay.
So that's a background. He is now out of it, and he wants to be a good father to his young son. And then, then he didn't want to embarrass his son in front of those, the other people in Sento. That's why he went through tattoo removing. Seems like that's a very painful procedure.
Yeah.
So that's why I thought that still some people are still frowned upon. See, again, it's maybe the the different tattoo sort of generate different reaction. But that is sort of this topic reminded me of this TV show. So again, this is a anecdote of anecdote.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting how you mentioned that the type of tattoo kind of exposes who you are. So if you do have like these, full body works of art, then people are like, this might be Yakuza related. But if you just
Right.
have like an armband or one sleeve on one side, or if you have random symbols here and there on different parts of your body, I mean, people are probably not going to associate it. But I just found that really interesting at this Harajuku location because I guess that might indicate that maybe younger generations are considering tattoos. So, Tim, as you're mentioning your son, thinking, "Oh no, I don't want to get a tattoo because I can't go to the onsen."
Well, his friend, my son's friend. Yeah.
Yeah, his friend. So, who knows what other people in those younger generations are thinking when it comes to tattoos?
I
Right.
think it's about time for Japan to change, but of course we always say that, right? I mean, it's just because I know so many young Japanese now who have them, you
Mm,
know. And the only reason I never got a tattoo because I'm actually my personality is very counterculture, just my mentality.
Yeah.
But one, if I what I thought was beautiful when I was in my 20s, I have a different aesthetic sense. So I knew
mhm.
my I changed my mind, and so it's so permanent. And then the other thing is everybody's getting them now, so that's not counterculture anymore. So I'm going against the grain. By I'm a clean slate. I have nothing, no jewelry, nothing. That's just me, the minimalist in me, right? Um, but I feel like with all the young people doing it now, there's gonna be a point where they're gonna put it behind them. But I
Yeah.
don't know when that will be, right? So
Yeah,
Well,
so we have kind of interesting things happening. Just Sentos in general, at least how they have been decades ago, are kind of on the decline. We're starting to see new, kind of more modern Sentos starting to pop up, and then how is that impacting the younger generations? Are they going to catch on to it? What are their thoughts about tattoos? I just think it's kind of like creating this new evolution, maybe
yeah,
um, of the Sento and public bathing.
yeah. And I also think it is important to realize because originally, when I first heard that, for example, Japanese public baths, including Sento and onsen and everything, they don't accept people with tattoos. I don't know why, but I thought the first thing that came to mind was that it's because of hygienic reasons. And it's not, right?
it's not right, right, right.
Not, but maybe, for some people, having a tattoo, no matter how beautiful a tattoo might be, it's still something to do with the uncleanliness of the skin or something like that. But it's not the reason, right? Catherine, as you said a little bit earlier, it's because those facilities, they were losing business because people didn't want to be around
The
yeah,
Yakuza.
right. Yes.
Yeah,
And so maybe if that message, is passed around that, of course, it's not about hygiene, it's, the reason is this and this and this. So probably there will be less resistance, you
It's
know.
funny, like instead of directly saying no yakuza, they're just
Mhm.
saying,
right.
well, most
No
yakuza
Yeah.
have
tattoos. Yeah, right,
tattoos, so
right, right.
tattoos. Well, no tattoos.
Is that because to generate some image like what kind of lifestyle they live on? I don't know. It's not a. I'm sorry. I may just saying that stereotyping.
No, we all stereotype. But maybe this
Yeah.
is because in the past it was mostly and maybe only the Yakuza who had tattoos.
Exactly. If you were
Right.
into tattoos, I think it was more common
So
for the
is this for tattoos popular amongst youngsters, or maybe youngsters
More.
may be too young, but maybe Generation X?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yakuza.
yeah, more.
I mean, I've been
That's the
seeing
news.
Hmm.
tattoos there, but I think the fact that the Sento's open to it, that could be just because that they're interested in more global people coming, there's a lot more foreigners who might have, you know, tattoos here and there than younger generation, but that's something to kind of continue. It's like to be continued. Let's see how that pans
Yeah,
Yes.
out.
yeah. It's a slow evolution. But just again, from an anecdotal,
Yeah.
there were always Yakuza guys in the Sento I went to, and they were all very kind to
Yeah.
me. And like they didn't cause any trouble at all. You know,
Mm.
I'm
No,
sure people were a little bit afraid of them. I wasn't because I was the dumb foreigner. I didn't know. You know, oh, not how are you? You know,
you asked. Oh, well, nice to
yeah, yeah, oh, good. And they're really nice to foreigners. Really, they were nice to me all the time, right? I just had to politely say no when they take, try to get me to go drinking with them, right? So, but yeah,
Mm.
I just feel like it's just funny. I know so many youngsters here who do have tats. They're little.
Yeah.
They're little. They're usually on your ankle or on, a little thing on your. So for them, it's easy to just throw that patch over it. But if you got a big one or a sleeve, now you
Yeah.
got it's a little bit harder to hide it. And
Yeah.
I
you.
have
There was
we
more
have two
tattoos
friends.
you
Mm.
notice. There's
Yeah,
more. I mean, now that I think about it, a friend of mine who's Japanese also has a tattoo, and she just puts a little band-aid on it when she goes in. So I'm sure there's probably more tattoos out there than
Oh,
what.
yeah.
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah, for sure. And Maya and I, we have two new friends that we made that both were on the podcast separately. And I invited them, like, come to Atami, enjoy our hot springs. And both of them said, yeah, we have tats. And so I went to my wife and I go, is there a way to find out, like, are there tattoo friendly places here? And,
Mm.
she was born and raised here, right? And she
Yeah.
didn't know, but, her solution was just the easiest. And she said, you can rent a hotel room where you have your own hot spring bath in it. And now you don't have to worry about it. That was her only option that she could come up with. I'm sure somewhere in Atami they would allow it, but it'd be like a hit or miss. I don't
Yeah.
know of
Right.
any, right? But that would
Yeah.
be a sales
Yeah,
feature.
definitely.
Like we accept tattoos for sure.
Yeah, tattoo
Yeah.
friendly. Yeah.
Yeah. And yes, because also if you go to the beach at any time of the year, you'll see, almost, I would say, even during the Golden Week, in Chiba at the beach, there were surfers and some people were sunbathing already. And I would say that probably, it's just an estimation, but about 5% of them, they had some sort of tattoo on their body. So, and some guys, young guys who were, they looked like people in high school who I'm sure had nothing to do with Yakuza, they had sleeves, of tattoos, like,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
already, obviously, the younger generations are changing, and I'm sure that the Sento and onsen culture, they will change too, but it will take a
They'll
little
catch
bit
up.
longer.
Yeah. There's
Yes,
always that gap, right? Yeah. Yeah.
yes.
So, okay.
So, Catherine, sorry. So, how are we tying this topic of Sento to what you do?
Oh, that's a
Great.
great question.
Yeah, that is a good
So
question. Yeah.
I'm actually in the process of writing a book right now,
Woo.
and I've done a talk, a TEDx talk on the Sento mindset. So it's just about the experience of being in the Sento, and now I'm trying to make it into like a book format. And since I work in the field of personal development, my goal is to use public bathing anecdotes and stories to illustrate common challenges people have with personal development in general. So, I
Mhm.
mentioned earlier on, when people are starting something new, it feels like going to a Sento for the first time. Like let's say you start a business and all you want to do is just do the business, but you realize you have to market yourself and you're like, oh no, what's this whole thing with vulnerability? And, at the same time, you might think that the biggest thing is just trying to get naked, but there's actually more challenges beyond that, which is trying to immerse yourself in very hot water, and testing the water. Really. So I think it really relates to things like, let's say you're starting a new leadership role, you feel like all eyes are on you, you don't know what you're doing, and then at some point you have to kind of experiment to try to find your leadership style. It could be, starting a new passion project, moving to another country. There's always that initial feeling of being put on the spot, followed by trying to kind of figure out what works for you. And I think there's just a lot of steps in the Sento that really illustrate that. And I'm hoping that people can see that you can actually put a framework on whatever challenges you want to experiment with. And if you can know and tell yourself that you're probably going to feel a certain way, down the line, you can prepare for it a little bit better.
Yeah, I love that, Katherine. And so we have also on LinkedIn, Hiroko-san, she wrote, I look forward to the book. Can you give us, an approximate timeline of the publishing, when it will be out and so on?
Yeah, so I'm actually in the process of writing it now. I would say I'm like 30% into it. So I still need some time to actually get everything together. I'm hoping to maybe complete writing it by this fall. So by the
Mhm.
time it actually goes through the publication process, it might not be out until maybe next spring. So I say from a timeline perspective, that's what I'm looking at right now.
Well, hopefully this conversation stimulated some thought because, like, when I talk to Maya and other people, like
Mhm.
I come up with new ideas just through the exchange. So I hope it helps even a little itty bitty, bit to maybe
Yeah.
come up with some thoughts and based on some of Yuka's issues that she brought up as well.
Yeah, I know. I think just her little anecdote and note about how, living in a place that didn't have a bath and going there day to day, that's, people might look at that differently, but that used to be the norm. That was a
Right.
Yeah,
totally normal thing is to not have
it
something
was the norm.
there.
It absolutely was.
I
Yeah.
love the term Sento mindset. How come
Yeah.
I didn't come up with that? You should,
Yeah.
patent this term Sento mindset.
Yes.
So next week, Imaya, you guys gonna do the self-publishing room, right?
Oh, that will be, yes. Well, next year, yeah, we're going to have Mike with us again, and we're going to talk about Senryu this time. And
Salary man send you
oh,
Sorry.
Salaryman
Oh,
Senryu,
it's not
yes.
about book. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
but it's about books again, right? It's
because
about
he's
books.
gonna publish
Publish,
a book. Yeah.
publish the
Yeah.
book.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
So, anybody listening who wants to come next week, try to, send you is like haiku, except it's funny. And it's got the 575. And so, if anyone wants to try to come up with their own salaryman send you, write it down and we'll talk about it.
it's a challenge.
And we'll just have fun.
Put like a kigo, the seasonal word. I think it's a real like a haiku or tanka. Yeah, they
Yes.
have to put some seasonal term, but for the senryu, you don't have to,
You
right?
don't
It
have
just
to.
has to be funny. It just has to be funny and humorous.
Actually,
Right,
funny.
right.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, but
Okay.
we can also, I don't know, Katherine, Yuka, if you have a little bit of time, so maybe Katherine, you can think about that, a salaryman in the Ufuro or Sento or something.
Ooh, I like
Yeah,
that.
English senryu. Are we
English
talking about
Senryu,
English
yes.
senryu?
English
Gee,
Senryu,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, English send you. Yeah. And the thing is, this is the challenge, okay? Some things in English, it might be 3 syllables, but in Japanese, it's 5.
Uh-huh.
Like
Yeah.
the I sound is one syllable in English, but in Japanese, it's I, right? Because you write it with 2 separate hiragana. Or the is a syllable.
Yeah.
While
Mm-hmm.
in English, it's not. But so English rules. If you're going to write in English, then it's the English rules, right?
So use
So
the English
five
roots
five
of six.
seven five. Right,
Yes.
right, right.
Four
Okay.
So
syllables. So,
I think I may play a hooky next time.
oh,
No, it's a challenge.
it
Anyway,
is a
I'm trying to come
challenge,
up with
but
something.
it's a fun challenge. So I have
It is
you
a
been
fun
don't
challenge.
have to. It's not mandatory to come up with a send you. That's just we're inviting people
I
if the
cannot
spirit moves you.
understand you, and then now you're saying English. Okay,
English,
all
yes.
right,
But English,
all
maybe,
right.
I don't know, for the English speakers, it's probably easier,
Mm.
to come up with these 575 lines of, and then,
575.
yes.
Okay,
Okay.
I wrote one send you last week
Yeah.
for Salaryman. Here it is.
Go.
The boss dozes off. He swears he's thinking deeply, but he was snoring. That's my send you.
I love
And this really happened to me.
Is that 575? Okay, I have to sit down and
Yeah.
count.
The boss dozes off. 5, right?
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
He
Yes.
swears he's thinking deeply. 7.
Oh,
But he was snoring. 5.
Yes. 5.
575.
sounds like almost like a 3, but it's okay. 5. Okay.
Right. Well, but yeah, the thing is that we want to have fun, and also,
Yeah.
yes, well, basically talk about this is another Japanese tradition, right? It is a cultural tradition, and it
Yeah.
also
Yes.
is related to business as well. So
Oh yeah, salaryman is
yeah,
the main
yes,
mainly business, right? Okay.
yeah,
That's gonna be fun. You're right.
Yeah.
yes,
And I would like to have Katherine back to talk about some of the things she's doing. And I just want to say, here's a comment, and this is just my little quirk, right? I always thought the title of life coach was a little bit pretentious, and I didn't understand what it meant. But I believe in Katherine's case, Japan life coach is a perfect description of what you do. You teach people how to adjust and function in Japan life. So that's kind of how I framed you. One of the things you do that adds value, because it's very important.
yeah,
If a foreigner comes to Japan with a job, you don't want your wife to be worried and lonely and not be able to function. And I think it's an underappreciated, dimension of
mm,
successfully going to any other country. Having like a life coach for that specific market and culture, I think is extremely valuable. So hopefully, Katherine, you can come back and enlighten some of us on that.
I
yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting to
Yeah,
see what
untapped market. Yeah.
it
Okay.
is, yes. And also, I am a receiver. I am actually a subscriber to Catherine's newsletter. So there are quite a lot of fun tips there as well that are very helpful. So if you haven't subscribed to that newsletter, just reach out to Katherine and subscribe to it, because you will learn a lot. Even if you're not a new person to Japan, if you're not a newcomer, there is still a lot of fun, and
That
they're
you
quite
can learn.
you can learn. So that's another thing. And of course, if you haven't connected with Katherine yet on LinkedIn, please reach out to her and do that,
Yes.
because yeah, there is a lot of things once again not to learn, but also to appreciate,
Let's
because
include that link. Let's include that link to our newsletter somewhere
yes,
so everyone
yeah,
can go there.
I'll include that a little bit later to link on LinkedIn and also YouTube, so that everybody who is watching, you'll be able just to probably click there and do the subscription, and also connect to Katherine. So
Yeah,
yeah,
please do. Thank you,
yeah,
Katherine. I love this. I had a blast.
Yes,
yes,
thank you both so much. This was so much fun.
Yeah,
yeah. Thank
let's do it
you.
again.
Let's do it again. Yes. Okay. Wonderful. So thanks a
Thank you,
lot to
everyone.
yeah
Thank
for
you.
being
Thank
with
you.
us. Thank you. See you
Thank you,
soon.
Yuka. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.